Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my Germany mug that my friend got for me a while ago, but it means a lot more now because I was just there and it was wonderful. So today's video is going to be my June reading wrap up. So we're just going to be talking about all of the books that I read in June and a little bit of my thoughts on them. So without further ado, let's just get into it. The first book I was able to read was The Devil and the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. This was in my buzzword book challenge, and the buzzword for this one was repeating words, so I used the. Stuart Turton was one of the first authors that really got me into mystery that I really loved. He wrote a mystery kind of thriller called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and I loved that book so much. So when he came out with his, and that was his debut. So when he came out with the second book, I was very excited, bought it immediately, but just now got to it. And I have to say this one was not my favorite. I didn't really like this one very much at all. I liked it a little bit, but it just wasn't nearly as good or on the same caliber as the first one that I read. Basically, when you start this book, there's a inspector that is highly successful, very smart, but he's imprisoned on this ship because of some accusations, or he could be a spy or something. And these murders start happening on the boat, and he has to try to help the people around him solve it while he's still imprisoned. And there's twists and turns, and you're kind of wondering, is there actually a demon, a devil, behind this, or is it a person? And trying to figure out the plot as it unfolds before they get to their destination. I didn't love the plot and how it unraveled, and the solutions, and the person that was behind it. I kind of suspected some of it, but I don't know. A lot of it just seemed kind of silly to me, or just not that intriguing. It's just kind of okay, so what? I didn't really care about the solution, about the mystery as much in this one. It was still okay. I think if you really enjoy his writing, maybe you'll like this. But I didn't love how the story went, and I felt like the first one was just so unique and interesting and cool, and this one was just kind of falling back on other things, other tropes, other themes that have been used. I didn't love the themes that were being used in this. I didn't love some of the trauma aspects, but it wasn't a horrible book. I gave it 3 stars, but it just wasn't as good. I also feel like the other one is really hard to top. And I think something that I didn't know necessarily going into this book is if I should expect a fantastical element or not, because of his previous book where there is kind of a fantastical time travel sci-fi fantasy element, and there's not in this. So I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if he was going to keep those elements in all of his books or not, and maybe that was part of the mystery he wanted, but there's not really an element like that to this. It also felt a little too long, and it felt like it wasn't as fleshed out as his first book. I didn't love the resolution, as I kind of mentioned already. And it was interesting, but it didn't hook me like the first book did. So it kind of flopped for me. Probably not going to keep it around. But if you enjoy mysteries, you might like this. The next one that I was able to read was A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. So this was a dark academia book. I didn't really know what to expect going into it, but I thought I would really enjoy it. You're following the main character, Effie, who is in this school for architecture because the academic writing research part of the school won't let women be in that field, but they will let her be in architecture, even though she's not really supposed to be there either, but they're just kind of more accepting of it if she's in that field rather than the writing and research type of field. So she's an architecture student, and there's this kind of bid that comes about that her favorite author, the house that he used to live in, that his family still lives in, but the author has passed away, that there's an opening for students to, I think, write about him, but also to have an architecture project to rebuild the house. Obviously, with this being her favorite author, she bids for it, and she ends up getting chosen, and she goes and is kind of learning more about the author's history and maybe some sinister elements in his past and with his family. And there's another writing academic student that is also there trying to write about it, and he hates the author, and so they're kind of butting heads a little bit. But it gets kind of interesting and dark and deep. This was really good. It was absolutely not what I was expecting it to be at all. The commentary and the dark subject matter of women being groomed and abused was not what I thought would be dealt with in this book, but it is. Nor was the subject of women not being believed and not allowed to be in certain jobs. I didn't think that would be in this book either. But I appreciated all of the themes and the dialogue and how it was handled, even with the fantastical twist in the book. It's sad, but it's also real. I liked the resolution and how it came about, but it was kind of strange the way it went. It was a little bit odd. I kind of called it, but I also wasn't sure kind of where the story was going to go for a while and if it was fantastical or not. It was kind of interesting. I don't know how I feel about the ending, honestly, but I see that there's going to be a second book and I will read it, and I'm curious what's going to happen. But there is kind of maybe a little bit of a cliffhanger situation. Overall, I would say if you're going to read this, don't expect it to be a light and fluffy read. It is pretty dark. And just go into it knowing that. But I really did enjoy this and I gave it 4 stars. The next one that I read that I absolutely loved was A Lady's Guide to Scandal by Sophie Irwin. This is book 2 in a Lady's Guide series, and you don't follow the same characters as far as I can tell in any of the books so far. But in this one, you're following Eliza, who she married back in the day, like 10 years ago. She married this man because it was better for her family, like with social standing and money, for her to marry this man that was very old, like a lot older than her. She married him and was married to him for 10 years, and now he has passed away, and he left her a fortune. And she can kind of do whatever she wants now, and the fortune wasn't supposed to go to her originally. It was supposed to go to like a male family member, but that's not what he wrote in the will. But there's kind of a like character contract where if she violates it, then the money goes back to the man. And another kind of twist in the mix is that when she married this man originally, she was actually in love with his nephew and they were going to get married, but she chose to marry the uncle instead because it was better for her family, but not necessarily what she wanted. And so now she's in this place of having the ability to do what she wants, and so she's trying to figure out who she is and choose what she would like instead of what society would dictate for her. I liked this one a lot. I loved it way more than the first one, and I liked the first one quite a bit. This book went a different way than I originally thought it would as well. I feel like for the first half of the book, or even more, you don't know what's going to happen with the love interest, which I think was done really well. It's kind of hard to keep you guessing like that. I think in this book particularly, this is the case of a love triangle done correctly, done right, done well, where you're conflicted on which side she will choose and which side you want to win for a while, and who she will actually end up with. The characters were really clever and funny. I liked the writing a lot. I also listened to this via audiobook, and the narrator was able to really bring the humor out in the characters. I enjoyed Melville a lot. He was a very fun character, and Eliza. And I liked that Eliza was getting her second chance at life and not caring what others thought of her. I became very invested and even giddy at some of the developments with the romance, which is a little bit difficult for me to buy into. So I did really like that. Again, this book has no spice, which I kind of prefer and like, but it was so good. I think I found another author where I will read anything she writes, and I can't wait for the next installment. 5 stars. Okay, the next one is The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. I don't really know why, but I really didn't like this. I gave it 1 star. It's kind of hard for me to put into words. It wasn't horrible or anything, but I was just so bored. I didn't care about anything that happened for the entire book. And that sounds silly because I read the whole thing, right? And it feels weird giving it a 1 star because I didn't hate it, but I felt nothing. Which is a shame because this is a beautiful book. I had no interest, and I was just able to power through because it's short. You're following a character who can talk to ghosts, and she's kind of made a career out of this because she's like kind of in the slums. She's in a poor family and they don't really have a way to make a living or to keep up with their bills. And so she is like a clairvoyant kind of, so she can talk to ghosts, and they will ask her to bring messages to their family, and then the family will pay her to hear from the ghost. But she finds that there's like some plot where these children are like coming back as like shells of themselves, and she kind of investigates this and tries to figure out what's going on and how to fix it. But again, you would think that that's a very interesting thing to read about, and I didn't really care. And she goes to this library of the dead to like research, and it's very mysterious and weird, and I didn't care. I think honestly this just isn't for me. I'm not the audience that you need for this book, but for the right person you might like it. The ghost aspect should be interesting to me, but it wasn't. I felt like the library could have been played up a lot more, and if we had focused on the library aspect and what it could do and like the different facets of that, maybe that would have been more interesting for me because I like magical libraries. Maybe it was the pacing issue, but I was just bored. I didn't really care. I can sort of remember what happened in the book. Like I can play out scenes in my head, I don't know. I didn't like it, which is very unfortunate. 1 star, yep. And then I finally read Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is book 5 in the Murderbot Diaries. I love the Murderbot Diaries, and this is no exception. I still love Murderbot. I love Murderbot. You love Murderbot. We all love Murderbot. I hope we all do. This was fun and had action as always. I was a little bit nervous about it being a full-length novel instead of a little novella. I was worried that maybe the pacing or something would be off, especially with the other ones being so short and so wonderful. And while the pacing was a little bit different for this one, it's still good and I still laughed. I can't really give you a synopsis of it because it's the 5th book in a series. But we're continuing with Murderbot's journey and antics and trying to be their independent self. I also definitely laughed out loud in the beginning in particular with the situation with the guy and the adolescent client. Oh my gosh, it was so funny. I loved it so much. And while nothing may be able to top the first one, All Systems Red, for me, because it was everyone's first introduction to Murderbot and why you fall in love with them. I love the series and I will continue it as long as she puts out books. Yep. 4 stars. The next one I was able to read was The Throne of Serpents by Frost K. This is book 3 in the Dragon Isle War series. This is the last book in the trilogy, and I didn't love the second one very much. I really liked the first one. I'm not sure how I thought the story was going to go or how there would be a resolution, but it wasn't this. It wasn't what I got. I'm kind of disappointed in it. This book was okay. I wouldn't say it's anything special. It seemed to me like Ren, the main female character, was saying one thing and doing another a lot, and it felt disjointed and didn't really make sense because she'd be like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to think this and believe this and whatever, but then she would do something else. And I didn't understand that. It didn't make sense why she was doing that. And the story ended okay, but it was still just so strange. I liked the first book a lot, like I mentioned, but the rest of them just kind of fell flat for me, and I didn't really like how the story necessarily unraveled and what played out in it and the different facets of it. It felt like the resolution also wasn't very good, which is sad, and I wish there had been more dragons, but obviously since the first book there can't be a ton of dragons. But yeah, I just didn't really care about the rest of the series, so I gave it 3 stars. Nothing horrible or anything, but I don't think as a whole I like it that much. But I think if you're interested in it, you should give it a shot. First one's the best to me, but see what you think. The next and final one that I was able to read in June was Dreadful by Caitlin Rozakis. I loved this book. It is so fun and so interesting and unique. First off, the cover. Take a minute to admire that. The edges, the spine. It's glorious. So I really enjoyed this. This was really, really fun. This is kind of what I wanted out of How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying. Like, I wanted this level of humor and almost lightheartedness. And I didn't like how that one did it. I loved how this one did it. A humorous fantasy. The premise was intriguing, and the use of the amnesia trope was actually done really well, and I really appreciated it in this case. That's usually a trope that I really dislike, so it's actually good. The premise is that a man wakes up in a Dark Lord's castle. He has no idea who he is. He has no idea how he got in a Dark Lord's castle. He finds a princess that's in the dungeon, has no idea why she's been captured, only to find out that he is in fact the Dark Lord, but has no idea why or what happened. He tries to kind of just like fake it till he makes it kind of a thing. But things get really complicated, and he finds out that he's part of a bigger plot with multiple dark wizards. And he's the dark wizard. So it's really fun and interesting. So this was just so fun. It was funny. It was kind of lighthearted at times. It was dark at times. There was magic, mayhem, a garlic festival, and character development. And goblins. So Gav is the nickname of the man that wakes up. Gav has a crisis of trying to find out who he is again after losing his memories, and has to decide what to do and who he wants to be now. Does he want to like continue to try to be evil? Does he want to change his ways? And it's kind of an interesting dialogue on that of like, if you have no memory of why you were evil in the first place, but you have like those tendencies still, do you change who you are? I really liked how that was handled in the dialogue behind that. It was interesting, but it was such a funny and lighthearted book that's so easy to digest. The goblin henchmen were surprisingly wholesome, and I cared about them and loved them. They were so cute. And I love how they become a part of the story. I think the writing and the perspective was really interesting and thought-provoking, and it was just so good. I will read her next book, because I guess this was her debut or something. Regardless, fantastic. 4 stars. So good. I think about this sometimes and I still really enjoyed it. And it's pretty short, so it's pretty easy to get through. Highly recommend. Well, like I said, that was the last book that I read in June. After that point, I was traveling, and so I haven't really finished a book since, but I've been slowly plugging away at some things, and some life changes and just stuff have been coming at me. So I've been delving a little bit more into nonfiction, but hopefully you've enjoyed this little wrap up. I would love to know any books that you read in June or any recommendations you have for me, if you would leave them in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, but for now, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.